Welcome, welcome, welcome. This is Much Love with Keoki, part of the Much Love family. My name is David, and the lovely man at the other end is my brother Keoki. In this episode, we're going to talk about the Polynesian world, the history, culture, tattoos, and music. This is the first part in the series, and we'll cover new parts in future episodes. This is from the heart, and I hope you enjoy. Much love. So, Keoki, I know you're like a Polynesian repository of information. Um, let's do the first part of the series and kind of go over some history, the culture of tattoos, music, some island life, and we'll try to focus on everything up to the 1900s. So that'll be the first chunk, and I'm going to turn it over to you, and I'm going to be one of the ones listening. So go for it, man.
Oh man! All right. Well, thank you first of all. Thank you for allowing me to get on this podcast. This is awesome. Look at the history. I'm not one to be really like a stickler with straight up information. I mean, all I did was learn things that I got throughout my career, my last 23 years of tattooing. I can really only just speak on what I know, and I might not be 100%, uh, uh, right, correct in all my information, but
Yeah,
I will
I'm
give
sure
everything I know.
people will say, when we get this going, there'll be things in the comments, but that's how we'll learn. But no, I trust you, man. Go for it.
Yeah, well, as with all tattooing, a lot of tattooing in Polynesia, especially around the world, everybody has their stories of starting, where everything started. I think the Samoans were the ones that have the story of Taima and Tilafaina, were two girls that they said came from Fiji. It was two women that actually held the knowledge of tattooing, and as they swam to Samoa, they were singing a song. And in the song, they were saying that tattoos are for women, tattoos are for women, tattoos are for women. And then they said that they ended up seeing a clam underwater that had like a really beautiful pearl in it. And then the girls swam down to go and look at this pearl. And then they're like, this is awesome. And then when they came back up, from the looking at that pearl going underwater, that the song changed and they said tattooing was for men. And it was these two girls, Taima and Tilafaina, who ended up in Samoa and taught tattooing to men. And so the tattooing came from these two women. They say came from Fiji. And if you go back in the history, they say that nobody knows where Fiji was. Was it? They say Fiji, but is it Fiji? Was another word Fiji, or it was other another place? You know what I mean? So they were looking for where that history came from, because all stories and legends are built off of some sense of fact. And
Right.
so they say that the tattooing came from there and has traveled down. They say a lot of tattooing came and migrated from the Southeast Asia and moved across the Pacific. Right now, I think they said that they've dug up the earliest dated bodies with tattooing on it, other than Otzi Man. Otzi Man is like, they want to say is like 10,000 BC or something. And Otzi Man
Wow.
was found in the Himalayas, and he's like a native person in the Himalayas. They found his body preserved in ice, because he froze in the top of the mountains, but his body had tattoos on it. So that's the earliest, I think, I guess, proof of tattoos back then. He had like little arrows and straight lines and stuff like that on his body, but they were tattoos. And so, other than that, for the Pacific, it dates back to the Philippines. Would be out in the Philippines. I want to say the Luzon territory or something like that. Like that's where they said that they found bodies that they exhumed and found tattoos on it, and they carbon dated it back earlier than any of the other Polynesians. So their history, they believe, came that the Polynesian just culture period, not just tattooing culture, migrated from Southeast Asia and moved across the Pacific, and then ended up in, like Hawaii was one of the last places to be, occupied. So each tattooing culture has their own sense to it, their own purpose, their own reasons behind it, and we go deep into them. For the Hawaiians, a lot of the Hawaiians, for us, their designs. Man, I wish I had like a visual that I could kind of show you because it's kind of usually how I do it for people. But um, a lot of the tattooing, each one was different. The Hawaiians had their tattoos. They were known for uh, more blocky patterns that were across the chest and stuff like that, and down on a little bit on the face. The Hawaiians were known for large triangles and stuff like that. The Samoans and the New Zealanders were known for the mid torso tattoos, were from the mid torso, the belly button down to the knees. The Maoris had theirs called the puhoro, and the Samoans had theirs, which they call it a pea. Pea just means tattoo, but the malofie is a particular type of tattoo that goes from the mid torso to the knees. The Maoris were also the first to tattoo their faces because
Yeah,
the
yeah, I've seen that. I saw this woman that I think she's actually in the government now in New Zealand, and she's got something that goes down from like her lips down her neck, kind of.
Yeah, so the tattoos of the Maoris, which is probably one of the more interesting of the Polynesian tattoos, is the Maori culture. The Maori culture was the first of the Polynesians, to my knowledge, they were the first of the Polynesians that believed in a dual existence. They believed in a spiritual as well as a physical existence. They were the first to incorporate meditation into their daily lives and everything like that.
Okay.
So a lot of their designs were the black ink. They have kodus, or these empty spaces, are like look like curls in their designs. And in their designs, the ink that they put in their skin represented the physical life that you see, and then the negative space, or those empty spaces that made that curls and the kodus and stuff, they represented the spiritual journey that people don't see, but it's still a design within a design. And
Oh
so
wow.
it represents the balance of your spiritual and physical journey together. It also a good friend of mine a long time ago told me that in tattooing there are two things. There's your ink and the negative space. So, or you have your bo and your hina. Your bo is your male, and your hina is your female. And your bo is the actual ink that is put in the body, and in your hina is all the negative space. That when you have balance in your tattoos, and you have harmony. When you have harmony, your tattoos flow and they move in a particular way because you have harmony in what you do. It is a balance of Mother Nature. It's the balance of everything, not just male and female, but it's the balance of everything in life. The symbolism of balance, balance of whether it's your spirit and your physical body, whether it's the balance of anger and peace, whether it's the balance of ups and downs, lefts and rights, the yin and the yang of life. Life is all about balance, and it's one of those things. And with the male and the female coming together in our tattoos, that if we are balanced in our relationships, if we are balanced in our lives, then our tattoos will become more balanced. So it's one of those things where your spirit, your energy goes into it. But they say from those girls, they learned their style of tapping, and then they go on, it travels on, and they migrated through and taught all the different islands their tattoos. And then in I want to say right around the time of Captain Cook, we started to get colonized. And a lot of the Polynesian cultures were colonized by Christianity and Catholicism, and then later on, the Mormons came down to the South Pacific. And so, with those religious cultures, they started to ban tattooing all around the islands. Sorry, I'm going on like a wild tangent. It's just what I do.
No, no, no. I'm following. I'm following. Go.
So they banned all these tattoos, but to my knowledge, the only ones that were not touched were the Samoans. So coming all the way back to the 1900s, in the 1900s, tattooing in America started to boost. But by then, majority of the actual Polynesian cultures had already lost their tattooing. Their tattoo was completely gone, just eradicated due to religion and colonization. It was the Samoans in the late 80s, early 90s when Alei Patelo and uh, I want to say Paulo the Third. I'm gonna get people are gonna hack me up for this because I don't have my friends. I was like they were the went out and they started to reteach the world or the Polynesian islands tattooing or the tattoo. And so they went out and started to spread it. So the teachers, the Hawaiians, ended up learning. Keone Nunez was the first of the Hawaiians to get back the Hawaiian tattooing culture through the Samoans, through Aleva. And then there was uh, all of Tonga, and a lot of other places, Fiji and other places where the Samoans went out and started to reteach the art of tattooing and to bring back that part of the culture. So that culture started to revive itself in the 1990s due to Patello and Aleva Patello and Apollo the Third, that they went out and did that. So a lot of people, I tell people, the most common and most popular style of tattooing is Samoan now because the teachers were Samoan. The teachers were
That makes
Samoan, so
sense.
yeah, so a little bit of their culture ended up being integrated with everybody else's culture. I mean, people went back and used what they did and tried to integrate it with their culture, the act, the physical act of that tattooing, and they took it back and just used their styles of tattooing, and then later on you had surgences in like not to say it didn't die in the Philippines. There was a lady who has been doing it for a long time. I forget her name, but then now we have the next generation of like Lane Wilkins and a lot of guys that are out there doing the tapping, the traditional Filipino style and stuff like that.
Oh,
So
is the tapping, is that Filipino, or is that like where did that come from?
don't know. There's many different styles of tapping. The Filipino, I mean, it's all kind of a way that the Japanese do tibori, which is a part. It's not a tapping, but more of a pressing, like shoving the needle into the skin, kind of doing that, kind of a pricking, kind of of emotion. The tapping or the tutto is kind of more common in the Pacific region. And
Okay.
I'm gonna say because they say tattoos go back to the Philippines, we could say the Philippines were probably maybe the base of the tattoo, but we don't. I don't think that people have checked that. I know that the young lady who does it now and Lane Wilkin and they do the tapping also. It's a little bit different technique than the Samoans and the Hawaiians and everybody else, but all the same kind of general motion, of the tapping to one ow or to another, one stick to another to create the motion to put the ink into the skin.
Which culture is the one that, it's, or is all tapping the, like, the one where you see it being this out of body experience where, the person lays down, and the I guess tribal elders are all around them, and they get their entire, like, thighs to chest or mid chest done. um I've just seen that on television, and in movies and things like that, where it's like this, the people travel out to somewhere in the Pacific, and they get this done. Is that something special, or is that just really all of the tapping involves that whole cultural, circled, and it being a real out of body experience?
Well, yeah, well that also goes back to the Samoans. The Samoans are the ones that were the more prominent in tattoo in that style of tattooing, and the one you're talking about are the Samoans. They're the ones that everybody's done documentaries on, and they've gone into it. I mean, Keone Nunez does it, but Keone Nunez, once again, he's from Hawaii, but he got his title from the Samoans, so he learned his techniques from the Samoans. So the Samoans were the ones who do this, where they sit down. They usually have a little kava ceremony where they'll drink kava and they talk to the guy who's going to be tattooing them. So it's a whole spiritual process. And then when they get down to tattooing, there's usually several gentlemen that sit around them. There are usually two guys that stretch. There's a person that wipes and the person that tattoos. And then they'll sit down, and they believe that through the energy that is exchanged through the organic tools, there's an exchange of energy where each one of them equally take the energy of the pain. And so they got together. So the Samoans will actually have people sit down next to you and with you, your family, the villagers, and they'll sing songs to you. They'll share the energy. They'll create an energy around you to help you through these hard times. And that's what they do. It's an unbelievable process. And their tattoo, they usually tattoo the malofie, which is a title, it's a name. The once again is their tattoo. The malofie is a particular name given from Alaiva'a and his line. I believe there are two families that are still the lines of the tattoo artists in Samoa. And one of them is Aleva. I don't remember off the top of my head what the second one was. I once again I'm going to get butchered, but it's one of those things. I'm doing my best, right? Um,
Yeah, yeah. Have you ever thought about getting that done?
I couldn't get it done because it's not a part of my culture. Well, I mean,
Oh,
I probably could. So the Samoans, when they would get their malofie, it's usually because somebody has become a matai. A matai is a chief or a leader of a village, and there are different types of matais.
oh,
There are
right.
matais like there are talking chiefs, and there are the nuis, the head chiefs that are the main ones, right? So you have different chiefs. So when a chief gets his tattoo or his malufia, usually he does it in pairs. They do it in pairs. There's somebody else that's getting tattooed with you. You guys share that experience together, as well as everybody sharing the energy. But there are also people who are being given the ability to wear the tattoos as like almost like being knighted by the Queen of England. You are given the title of a knight. As I say, it's the best way to describe it. You are now a knight of the king. And when the king allows you to wear this malofie or this bea, then you are considered like an honorable person, like literally honorable. It's almost like wearing a military uniform or something like that, like wearing a knight's armor. Like you are blessed by a king to wear this tattoo that you are.
That's
But
crazy.
yeah, and when people saw these tattoos, that back in the days in Samoa, they looked at these tattoos, and when somebody would see somebody with a malofia, they could be able, they knew immediately this person, one, was an honorable person. Two, this is a person that I can trust because the king trusts him. You know what I mean? Three, that if I ask for help and everything, he will take care of him because they are bound by their duties. So their tattoos themselves, and maybe we could have an episode one day. I'll talk more about that when it goes down into the actual markings on the Samoan
Hmm.
malafita. But in their tattoo represents their duties, their responsibility to their chief, their responsibility to protect and take care of the women and children in the village, and to feed and work for the village, and also many things. So each one has responsibilities, and these responsibilities are tattooed on that body. So people know that they are bound to that, this a way of life. They were honorable people, and when they wore these tattoos, people knew that, and it was an unbelievable thing. And so when the Samoans got that and they tattooed that, it was a very big ritual. And even when they're done, they go through a massive ceremony to welcome them into this family, to these matais, and this level of honor, this level of prestige, and now the Hawaiians do it like that too, Keoki Nunez, once again, because a lot of us were taught by the Samoans that where we gather, and the whole sense of gathering, sharing energy, and that purpose. And people have their own processes that they modified from that, but it all came down from that core value. The Samoans, I think, have been tattooing and doing that untouched for over 3,000 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
And do you know if the Japanese view the origin the same, or is it, or do most cultures have their own story, if you will, of where it came from?
Right, yeah. The Japanese, I believe that they have theirs completely different stuff. I believe that from a lot of my friends who I've tattooed or tattooed with and hung out with that have told me the stories of the Japanese, they said that the Japanese back in the days would tattoo their prisoners to mark them, to know if you did something wrong. They would tattoo you to have a permanent shame. So when you walked in public, people knew that you were a criminal. So it was an opposite effect, where the Polynesians, it was the highest sense of society. It was the
Right.
highest sense of honor. In Japan, it was the sense of like, you got a tattoo. Oh, that's because you probably did something wrong. You're a bad person. You know what I mean? And so a lot of that, and then later on, it started to get into the people wearing their deities and their stories. Because the one thing about the Japanese is their philosophy, their ideologies about things, is their storytelling of the history is unbelievable. And then they started to wear their stories or their deities and the symbols of luck and everything like that on their bodies. But originally, it wasn't. Yeah.
So
Go ahead.
yeah, I mean, so some of the other things that I think we can touch on in later episodes are kind of the music that goes along with these cultures that's relative to each region. I'd be really interested in hearing that, and it's really cool to hear how in different cultures there are stories of where it came from. And I thought that story about the two sisters and passing that along, that's really neat, and kind of how it spread, from maybe the Philippines, maybe Samoa, and somehow it got to uh, Tibet, or maybe it came from Tibet. I don't know. That's all really cool, and it's neat for you to be able to pass along that history, and that's kind of how we learn. How the message gets passed. And before the internet and before all of this, it was all about storytelling. That's it's called oral tradition. It's passed along from one generation to the other. Before we wrote things down, that this is how the stories were told. And in the Polynesian culture, the stories were told and recorded on skin. So I mean that's that significance, that history of it, that's really neat. And to hear how there are some artists that are carrying that message, that are bringing it to a new generation. That also is something that I find very deep. Passing along and keeping those traditions alive. And I think that that's something you do as well. You by having these conversations, by putting meaning behind your tattoos. And yeah, some people just want the aesthetic, but for there to be a meaning behind the tattoo, that makes all the difference. It's I remember there was the fad in the early 90s, the tribal
Right, right.
armband. And I don't think there was any real significance to that. There wasn't really any story behind it. It was just the aesthetic. And in some aspects, I feel like that took the culture back a little bit. That brought things to it made it too commercialized. I kind of think. When you were kind of doing this in the 90s, was that something that you were hesitant to do? Did you ever turn down a tribal band, like the ones that frat guys have, kind of?
No. I mean, they were all over the place in the '90s, like you said. It was a big thing. I think it's just because America we're the youngest major country in the world. We're the youngest. We have the youngest culture in the world, America. So to me, tattooing was, in order for it to grow, it's first the interest in it. They found the interest in something that they see from other cultures. It's kind of like a younger brother hanging around an older brother. It's like, oh, my brother does this, my brother does that, and then you're always going to be interested in it because your older brothers and sisters do it. So when you have a country like America that looks at countries like Samoa, that's been around for 1,000 years, well, thousands of years before Jesus Christ walked this planet, you know what I mean? And all these
Yeah.
other countries that do tattoos, like it's only natural for the country to seem interested in the actions of what the older siblings do. The problem is they don't quite understand the actions yet. So what they do is they just try to imitate, and then from there, then they learn purpose. So right now, I think there's that big fluctuation in understanding purpose and the understanding behind the tattoo. It's not just getting the T-shirt that my brother used to wear. It's not just like I want to wear that Metallica T-shirt. You know, it's like you
Right.
don't even to their music. You know what I mean? It's like, but when you listen to the music, then the Metallica T-shirt makes sense. You know what I mean? That you understand why you love that culture, that nature. So I think in tattooing, America just hasn't. We're too infant. We're still in our infant stage. We don't understand enough yet of the world. We see the world. We want to do things our own way because we're the young, we're the rebellious people. If you look at us in the sense of the world, we're the emo teenagers of the world. You know what I mean? That's we're America. This is
Yeah.
America. We don't like
Yeah.
rules. We don't like old people. We don't like old cultures. We don't like old mindsets. We are just the emo teenagers of the world. That's what America is. We strike up growth. We strike up innovation. We strike up revolutions and all that kind of stuff. So that's what America is. So I think with that, when it came out in the '90s, it was just America trying to find themselves amongst their brothers and sisters, or the older countries like Europe, like Africa, like the islands, the Pacific Islands. They see something that the older brothers and sisters do, and they want to get into it. And then it comes down to it where like you were saying, music, like like say we tell stories. There's many ways we told stories. Like you said, mainly a lot of them were verbal. We spoke our stories to people, and we also wrote them down. That's where when we started to have formal writing, where we wrote down things. Even the Egyptians wrote their stories in petroglyphs and stuff like that. And all the tattoos to us in the islands are our writing. It is our petroglyphs. That's what we do. We told our stories through that. But I think the one thing that's being lost the most is not the storytelling, it's the morals behind the storytelling. I think we pass the stories to remember the morals. And why do we pass the story? We pass the story because there was something to be learned, something to be taught. In every lesson, there's a moral behind everything. I think a big thing that's going on because America's young. A lot of people nowadays they started to do their tattoos, but they didn't understand the morals of their stories. So they're just tattooing these things. They're just writing words on a piece of paper. They haven't learned how to organize their words yet into order to make sense, to make an impact. So with what we do and what I do in my tattooing, we try to do that. We try to understand and help teach people how to make an impact in what we do, and with these tattoos and what their deeper purpose is. It isn't the fact that I think like some people, even with Polynesian tattoos, some people fight with that, what is right, what is wrong, who does it the right way, who doesn't. And in the end, I look at it like look, everybody does it the way that they do it, but you have to understand the morals of the story. One guy will say my story has Dwayne Johnson in it, and they're like, yeah. And one guy's like, well, yeah, well, my story was that Roman Reigns in it. My
Right.
story has Jason Momoa. And they're worried so much about the stories that they missed the moral of the story. So I think for me, I try to focus more on my stuff, on telling the morals of the stories for the people. And the tattoos that I give somebody isn't the tattoo that you need to look at. It's the story, the moral behind, or like you said, the purpose behind the phrases that you tattooed on your legs. It's the purpose behind that that gives it power. It's just a phrase, but it means so much to you in the power of it. That moral behind that story, taking it just 1 minute at a time, or that day, the next day, that everything will be okay. All these things are just, they have something that is the power behind it, which is what people are now in America learning. They're learning this power because at first they imitated. They just watched their brothers and sisters. Then they did it. They did it. They did it. They got better at it. But then they found the purpose in it. And then now the culture of America and tattooing is starting to get to a different place. But it even goes down to, like you were saying, music earlier. I tell people there are three things in culture. People talk about cultural appropriation and all this stuff like that. And to learn a culture, I tell people there's the three things that you'll find in every culture. I don't care what culture it is. It's food, dance, and music. Those are the three things, because those are the three ways that we pass the energy and culture of our people. You want to tell the stories, you sing a song. You want to tell the stories, you sing, you dance to that song, and you dance the motions of the stories. There are hula. There's the Indian dancing from India. There's dances from around the African dancers. They tell the stories of their ancestors and their morals and values through dance and music. And then the food is what gathers everybody to bring them to the dance and music. It is the gathering of that, of us coming to eat this food, that we can share our energy with each other. So those are the most important things. And then, not everybody had tattooing, but to people like us, like Polynesians, like Africans, and everybody stuff, we used tattooing in the same function, the same way. This is how we told our stories, and it's the morals and values that come together, that we pass. It's not just the story; it's the values behind the story. Like, why do you do this? Why do you do that? It's a very, very big thing. So that's an impact that I think we're trying to, and I'm especially trying to focus on and bring back into the world.
So this is kind of a tangent, but do you know about African tattoo culture? Like where that came from, and kind of that story, or is that
I
something too far?
I don't know. I know that they have forms of tattooing. That's all I know. I know that they have it. What they used it for and why they used it for, I'm not too versed in their cultures. I just been around a lot of Polynesia, but I know, talking
Right.
to some people, like I have tattooed people that have come to me from, like, a lot of people came from, like, Benin, or in the area of that area, Nigeria and stuff. They say 90% of the slaves, or the African Americans that came this way, came from the western shores of Africa, in Nigeria and Benin area, like that Benin city. That's where the majority of the traffic of African slavery came across. And so when they came across, so a lot of guys come in, and they ended up in the Caribbean, in the Caribbean out there, and then they migrated up into America, as slavery moved them around and stuff. But I tattoo these tattoos where guys will bring me their symbols, and they want me to tattoo it in particular ways on top of them, these symbols of their culture, and to
Okay.
talk to them about what it means to them and what it means everything. And it's the same thing as the Polynesians. They just have a different symbol for it. They have symbols for peace, for love, and all these different things. And then why they wear it and what they wear it for is pretty much the same thing as the Polynesians do. So with that, I don't know a lot about their history and how it
But
started and all.
they're common threads, just like you said:
Right.
peace, love, family. Um,
The morals and
the
values that we pass. Yes.
Right, and they're central. So everyone, has these pieces of who they are, and there are a lot of similarities. I didn't think of it that way.
Yeah, and because in the end, it doesn't matter what color our skin is. When you cut us open, we all bleed the same blood. In the end, we all still have a heart. We all want peace. We all want love. How we represent that and how we push that is really what it is. We all want to teach our children, don't be bad to somebody else next to you. Don't do this. Don't do that. We have our morals and values. And if you look around the world in all the cultures, 99%, we're all the exact same. We just do it different. That's it. So we want the same things in life. So with understanding these tattoos and how we can push it, people all come to me from many different cultures. Many different people want to wear these tattoos because we all search for the same outcome. We all want peace. We all want love. We all want happiness, and we all just want to live together in that harmony. And that's what I think is the biggest impact of it.
Absolutely, and I can't thank you enough for sharing, this knowledge, and I look forward to future episodes where we get to talk about island music, Polynesian music, and the history behind it. That's something I'm looking forward to. So I thank you again, and look forward to future episodes. And much love, man. Much love.
Yeah, yeah, and as we get into that next episode, talking about that, I'll explain that definitely how the music also moves and flows with my tattoo. So I use the music and that harmony of it and the flow, just like writing tablature for a song. That's how my tattoos are developed. So even the connection of that is really dope. And yeah, I can't wait, brother. It's gonna be awesome. Thank you so much for the opportunity to sit down and share this energy and these thoughts and what we in Hawaii call our mana'o, our thoughts with each other, our knowledge. Thank you so much, brother. Thank you so much.
All right. And we'll see you guys on the next episode. Much love.
Much love. Aloha.